Chom Nam La Chancho Bardu Dagi Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chunin Kipe Samna Kir Drola Penche Sangye Drapasho Chodam Soki Chom Nam La Chancho Bardu Dagi Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chunin Kipe Samna Kir Drola Penche Sangye Drapasho
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you again. You're welcome.
It's like he's English tonight.
Good practice.
Oh yeah.
You're welcome. He's not from here.
Oh, for Andy's
Andy's
Andy
here.
can translate.
Good practice.
Anyway, how many weeks? 2 weeks we are on the course?
Yeah.
More, 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Oh, we had Rantonio, and then last week was Puja. We had, last week was Guru Puja, week before was Rantonio.
Yeah. Everybody forgot.
Yeah.
Most people forgot. Anyway, everybody knows and self the perfect motivation to achieve enlightenment benefits for 4th beings is good. And also this mind, special mind. And whatever we do virtues, then they will multiply. And if we do non-virtues, also multiply. You know, it usually also depends the subject or the place or the object. And monks, you know, they're ordained people. What's the ordained people? Ordained people do the virtuous things with more power. But if they do the non-virtuous things, also more good. You know, more strong than lay people. Therefore, you know, this place also very power, very blessed place. Stamp also, you know, Buddha's birthday, enlightenment, and pathways and month, then special. Then or wherever we do some virtues, then they be multiplied for good everyone. Then now we talk about this book. Book talk about the mind. I think, you know, scientists, they really check the, you know, physical things. They really measure, you know, even they make some papers. When they start to newcomer, they can tell how many years you can use it. Right? I think they can do that.
How many what?
How many years? How long you can use the paper?
Yeah.
Right? He said, okay. Students knew that 100 years you cannot use the, you know, black or the, you know that, you know, all the physical things they check, measure.
Yeah.
They measure everything. They can find, you know, how far, how long, you know, you can see the minutes, or the we can do grocery. They put all the labels. You can use that to here, that to there. And how many chemicals is there? How much fat? How much unfat? How much proteins? They can put everything exactly number. But in the mind, no no one measure. Then I think maybe only the Buddhism, I don't know that religions, I'm not sure, but Buddhism trusts in the very details how many different commands for our life, and how they work, and how we need all the demands, why we need the too much different minds. You just use one. Each mind has each job. If one missing, then other mind also doesn't work. Then the Tibetan texts, they are more detailed, they talk, they're more experience. But it is very difficult people understand, also very difficult to experience. Because other things we can do some examples, we can see, but mind just, blind, right? We cannot see blind.
Sure.
Is it blind? We just talk about.
We are blind
We are
to
blind.
the mind.
Oh, we are the blind to the mind. We just, what's here, what's there? Then someone says, oh, you are here, there's such things, that's here, then we don't see, just we imagine,
Imagine.
Imagine. Otherwise we don't see. You are mind there, right? Eyes consciousness, then ears consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and what's the lishi? What is it?
The bodily consciousness.
Body consciousness. There were different consciousness that very difficult to be known. But for some minds we have experienced, there different kind of mind. When the minds arise, then we have more experience. Good. One time I finish. I'm
Good job.
completely
Good job.
I'm completely finished.
You did good, Geshe.
And some months they call the name, then we say, this kind of month we call that, attachment, jealous, and compassion with each other. We say, oh, if you are feeling or you remember you have this kind of mind, we call it bodhicitta. If you mind this kind of mind, we say, oh, this is compassion. This kind of mind, we say, angry, and we give names.
So we give a name to each mind and talk about them. So those minds in which we call such and such, you can only explain about them, through your experience. And otherwise, there's nothing you can really see or feel.
아니 시바 망고식 같이 그냥 맨날 탐해 말해서 매바이나 아니 시바도 망고식 안 같이
So if those mind doesn't exist, then again, it's not good because then the mind will not be able to function.
아니 딱 나서 신경을 또요 그래서 와 되게 똥이 돼딱 나서 제가 신경이 시바시 이름이 이제 빠지고 그래서
And so we know those minds. So there's a mind which knows things, which knows, which cognizes the things.
다들 다 가서 그는 가좀 다 얘도 있지 뭐뭐시 다 있지 나중에 다 제마도 재미를 넣어서 뭐뭐시를 와다 같이 다 재미들이 가서 맞아 납사해 봤어 다 갑자기 그냥 같이 납사를 했어.
So we started about 2 weeks ago, right? About talking about object possessor. Then the object possessor has the mind, the consciousness, the knower, and that one has the valid cognizers and non-valid cognizers and so forth. So we talked about that a little bit, right? So the valid cognizers have the direct valid cognizer and the inferential valid cognizers and so forth, right?
이팅에서 해야 되거나 이팅에서 하는 공부에서 이팅에서 이해해서 공부에서 가서 뭐 lap사res.
And then we talked about a little bit about direct perceivers, right? Direct perceivers, there are like the sense direct perceivers and mental direct perceivers. So we talked about sense direct perceivers already.
근데 이팅에서라 하는 이팅에서 라중에 나중에 쓴다 때문에 도서를 때문이지. 다 이해서라 하는 공부에서 이팅에서 다 공부에서라 오시는 가요. 다 때문에 도서를 해서
The sense direct perceiver, there are 5 sense direct perceivers, so we're going to went through all those 5s.
간제 이팅에서 간제 다 미시들 간제 다 미시들라 금방으로 번지 미시잖아. 번지 미시들 다 이팅에서 쓰거든요. 다 공부에서 이팅 말해서
So, for example, the eye consciousness, the eye sense consciousness, apprehending of ways, it's like one of the sense consciousnesses, sense direct perceivers.
간제 내 저도 미시 다른 데 대도 전도 또도 내 시비시가 미시도 대시받으라다 네 미시처럼 공부에서 이팅 말해서
So, for example, your eye consciousness, which sees this book, the book in front of you, is the sense direct perceiver. That's the eye sense direct perceiver, perceiving or cognizing the book. And so then we have a nose consciousness, right? Which can smell the food and so forth. So nose sense consciousness.
다 이팅에서 해야 돼. 다 이번에도 이번 이팅에서 나왔어. 그냥 예완이 됐어. 그래서 그거 통만 받아야지. 영화라 되는 저거 같이 또 받아서 만점이 연기시 봤어.
And then we have this the mental direct perceiver, right? This is with respect to the second, the mental direct perceiver, there are 2 parts, definition and division. The definition is the first, the definition of the mental direct perceiver is that which is generated independent on a mental sense power, that is one uncommon empowering condition, and is a consciousness that is an other knower that is free from conceptuality and non-mistaken.
다 연기시 봐서 이라고 왔어. 또라도 가지고 또가 많이 가지고 그래. 아니 연기해야 돼. 다 많이 가지고 그래.
So if he says other knower, right? So when he says other knower, that means he should not be a self-knower.
다니바 대라이나 인간의 집에 테마 근데 제시 마음으로 선을 해서
And then the division, it says, so when mental direct perceiver are divided, there are 3, the valid cognizers and that are mental direct perceiver, subsequent cognizers that are mental direct perceiver, and awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained that are mental direct perceivers.
아니 이쪽에서 해야 돼. 같이 소소시오지지 이쪽에서 되게 끼지마. 끼지면 찍으려 말했어. 다시 소소시오지는 이쪽에 참아파시 딱 매워로 줘.
So the mental direct perceiver almost virtually does not exist in the mind of the ordinary beings.
아니 실제야 그냥 준비 미시 따라잖아. 준비 미시 가마타다. 아니 준비 인해서 딱 떼스게로 살아들어.
And so, for example, the sense direct perceiver apprehending the vase or form. So that followed by that mind, there comes this mental direct perceiver, which is for a very, very short time.
대제에 아니 계시 딱 담아 가지는데 아니 딱 대시 자르고 딱 대시를 단다 이게까지 가서 그렇죠.
And then soon after that, like very, very short moment, of the mental direct perceiver, then it becomes a mental image, meaning generality.
그냥 만수 여사바지 미신 통치로 대통의 대미시대인가 바탕 이시대 딱 이게 대제로 그랬어. 대제에 아주 제가 나도 틀려내야 당가지는 통소식 전투이나 될 되셔야 다 이게 정말 또 봐요.
So, for example, you see something, right? So you see something with your eyes, so that's the eye consciousness seeing it, and then soon after that, then your mind thinks, oh, this is such and such. So that is the mental direct perceiver, which is for a very, very short time. And after some time, then soon after that, then it's it is such and such. It's just that. So you are remembering, you are thinking about it. It's no longer mental direct perceiver. And so there is a mental direct perceiver, followed by all these five sense, all of these five sense consciousnesses. Got it? So in the ordinary being's mind, there isn't a valid mental direct perceiver. Almost, virtually doesn't exist at all. And so those the spiritual beings, in a meditative equipoise, will have a valid mental direct perceivers. And so then this is the first, the valid cognizer that is a mental direct perceiver, and is, for example, the first moment of a clairvoyance that knows others' mind. And then the second, the subsequent cognizer that is a mental direct perceiver is, for example, the second moment of a clairvoyance that knows others' mind. And this, so when we talk about the subsequent cognizer, it is the subsequent cognizer is a knower that cognizes what's been already cognized. And then the third one is the awareness to which an object appears, but is not ascertained. It appears, but it's not ascertained. And it says, for example, a mental direct perceiver apprehending sound in the continuum of a person whose mind is especially attracted to a beautiful form. So when your mind is focused on some kind of beautiful form, then you do hear the sound. It appears to your ear, but it's not apprehended or it's not ascertained. So for example, like when we're watching movie or television, and then somebody says something to us, and because we're focused so much on the television that you don't actually hear properly what the other person is saying.
Right?
You hear the sound, but you don't hear it. You cannot catch the words exactly.
Then we say, what is it? Then we have to say, right?
And so that's what is called, the object appears, but it's not ascertained. So then, for the direct perceivers, there are four of them, right? So sense direct perceiver, mental direct perceiver, and the self-knowing direct perceiver, and yogic direct perceiver. So we've already gone through the first two, and now the third one is the self-knowing direct perceiver. So the definition, there's a definition again, just like before, definition and division. And so the definition of the self-knower, is that which has the aspect of an apprehender. And so it says the definition of the self-knowing direct perceiver is that which has the aspect of an apprehender, is free from conceptuality, and is non-mistaken. And so that's the self-knowing direct perceiver. So when we talk about the self-knowing or self-knower, there are different views of schools. So there are many different schools of thought. The tenets, which accepts or doesn't accept.
그래서 랑 시바디야 랑사지 자로도 지요 선하고 배잖아. 내가 한 대씩 못했어.
So when you talk about apprehending or self-knower, knowing yourself, so there is a mind which sees the, let's say for example, the eye consciousness which sees the vase, right? And so there's the seeing the vase, or knowing the vase is knowing other, the vase is other, right? So knowing the vase. And so as it knows the vase, it also knows itself, the mind which is knowing the vase, and so that's called the self-knower. And so different tenets, will explain maybe in different ways.
딱 그때 미나다 뭐 내가 올 때고 레시자 색깔 강도 왔어 가지 배자다는 드린 데서 봐 시바디 시여 통하고 이게 자리 아니 제리더라 그래서 아니 코란이 너무 자리더라 그래서 딱 말해서 아니다 그래서 노탄 코라들이 딱 그래서 요소
So for knowing the something, knowing the object other than itself is called another knower, and knowing itself, it's called the self-knower.
아니 개량에 대해 다 너대와는 너대 아니 솔직히 개량해서 아니 sem처럼 개량하지 아니 엄마 안제베게 다 관계 개량 아니 솔직히 개량해서
And so among those different tenets, those who assert the self-knower, are men basically the mind-only school, and there's some part, one part of the Sautantика school also, and then also there's one part of the Sautantika Madhyamika school.
아니 노대시 아니 이렇게 지나면 노대가 뒤 하나를 캐는 것을 했어.
So those the follower of the reasonings, logical reasonings, of this Sautantика school, accepts the self-knower, asserts the self-knower.
뭐지? 아니 나중에 오마라지를 캐는 거였어.
And then there's the ones part of the Sautantika Madhyamika school, that's called the yogic Sautantika Madhyamika school. So that those assert the existence of the self-knower.
아니 다 빼라서 시와초들 내든지 그건 나중에 와는 오마라지가 있다. 그렇게 캐는 거였어.
And so for example, like the Shantarakshita and Baba Viveka, those are the components of the yogic Sautantika Madhyamika school, and so therefore they assert the existence of the self-knower.
아니 리베지는 도 되와 세트 바지 테마 대듯이 지는 도 되와 딱 들어라고 들어왔어.
And so then there's the followers of the logical reasonings of the Sautantika school. So there's this different seven different texts. So those who follows that, those who accept or assert the self-knower.
어떻게 캐는 거지? 다 캐면은 아니 시라마고 캐는 거 말했어. 엄마 다니면 캐는 거 말했어.
And those who don't accept or assert are the Vaibhashika school and the Prasangika Madhyamika school.
아니 너대시 오마라지를 캐는 거 말했어.
And then the Sutra school of the Sautantika Madhyamika school also don't accept that.
아니 용기지는 너대로 캐는 거 말했어.
And then those are the followers of the scripture, the scripture of the Sautantika school also don't accept that.
다 너대시 오마라지만 다 너를 내든지 내 신이 못해서 너대시 오마라지만 놓았어.
Susan?
너의 신이보다 아니 내든지 너를 내든지
오마라지가.
너대시 오마라지.
에너지를 남았대.
근데 걔네들이 시와서를 생겨서 보지.
네, 저 생성부.
생겨서 대단히 시와서. 너대시 오마라지만 아니 내든지.
Sorry, earlier the follower under the yogic, the Sautantika Madhyamika school is the one who accepts or asserts the existence of the self-knower. The proponents of that are the Shantarakshita and the Haribhadra, and those who don't accept, is the Sutra, the Sutra school of the the Thubten Damchoe, and the proponents of those are those that is like Baba and Baba Viveka and so forth.
But this is too complicated, okay? Too complicated. You don't know who are they, just... 간지 다 라리 세대 다 라리 세 켈랭이 좀 가르나 간지 시바데 코나 묘기 전에 다 라리 세대에서 아니 키 시바데 예수 시도 도와다니 지금 따와래서 아니 캠을 어떻게 따고 말해서 라리 세 고가가 따고 말해서 간지 시바 코나 연구해서 그래야 그래서
Anyway, so those who assert, saying that there is this mind, which knows the other, which knows the object, therefore it's called another knower, and then also it knows itself, and so therefore there's the self-knower. So there's this mind which knows the self and itself, and therefore there's the mind called self-knower. But then those who don't assert, says it's not necessary to assign a mind, to say that which knows that. Mind knows itself. So there is this self knower already there, but it's not, separate. There's no separate mind called self knower.
아니 빼다 다 좀더니 간지 라리 캠랭이 소라리 뭐그 되잖아. 아니 쇼아 특별히다 뭔가 전에 뭔가 또 사오니. 아니 내가 코레야 다 좀더니 소리가 와서. 아니 산지 쭉가 야스니 야랑 참아라. 아니 다 공부한 동서 다 나마 그리고 소리에서 누구 사람들 다 고쳐셔라. 똑똑해서. 나를 넣어. 또
지워.
마우스로. 다른 사고 되는 마우스를. 고도를 다 공가 고도 오는 사람이 이해되는 다 그리고 소리에서. 근데 산지가 고도 야랑 참아라. 근데 생제까지 다 조세해 사고 이해되는 거로. 아니 맞다는 거 그만 말아야. Those who don't
mouse?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's easy.
Yeah, there's such kind of mouse.
I don't know.
So, I don't know, there's kind of bear or something.
Maybe a mongoose? Something that burrows in a hole, right?
Naked mole rats.
Maybe a
A
ferret?
mole? No
Naked
eyes?
mole- Naked
No
mole
eyes?
rats.
A marmot, maybe. A marmot.
Is that what you mean?
The naked mole rat.
Anyway, 사람이
What's the name? Tibetan name?
좋아.
Well,
No,
it's like a rat-like creature
Yeah,
that
rat.
burrows in a hole, right?
So does it have eyes? Does the animal have eyes?
They have eyes.
Oh, because moles are-
Usually they sleep on the underground. 6 months winter time.
I think it's marmots or like a...
anyway, so, what Geshe was saying is like a rat.
Oh, a gerbil?
Isn't it too bad?
I don't know.
It doesn't
You
matter.
get the idea though, right? It's some kind of rodent that burrows in
Yeah,
the winter and lives underground. Yeah, okay. So
It lives underground, and and snake will come and bite it. Right?
that's a mongoose probably.
Yeah. So I was in my mind, I was thinking if it's a mouse, maybe snake will just eat
Eat
it,
them, yeah.
and not just bite and leave it there. And just eat it. It's so small, maybe, but maybe it's a little bigger than that. Anyway, so when it's bitten by a snake, it doesn't feel it during the time it's sleeping, right? It doesn't feel it at that time. Then later, during the winter time, it sleeps, so it doesn't feel it. But in the spring, when it wakes up, then it feels the pain, and then that time, then it knows, oh, I must have been bitten by a snake. Yeah, so that's why I feel the pain. So he knows at that time. So that shows there's no mind which knows itself at that time.
근데 다 전바디가 다 신바디 공고 또 그랬어. 근데 영감만 저와라. 영감만 지정한 지 세종하고 하고 말이야. 근데 이제한테 그래. 소소 때만 먹는 정말라. 보다가 저 세종을 해서 가지 전바디 제대로 해서 근데 왜였어? 이제 대라를 개면서 나는 먹을 때
So anyway, so this is to prove that you don't need, the self-knowing mind, to know that, So by remembering that, by thinking about it, you will come to know that you must have been bitten by a snake.
간지 가나 코나스 내가 양가와 집이 시바지가 간지 내가 나를 세대 간지 카 마테마다 다 실대기 다 실로 주게 제가 말했어. 가나 코나스 내가 양가와 집.
So anyway, so it's there's the mind, which is directing towards itself, towards inward, directing inward, and knowing it or cognizing it and without, without directing it outwards, to the other objects.
간지 따따라 가는 것은 다 가르쳐야 다 간지들이 다 개념들이 개념이에요. 아니 양치를 가나 코나시 나가 야가 지금 나와서 말아야 지 시바 대다 코나도 다되게 시바지 또 용을 하는 게 좋았어. 아니 배자 개지들은 배자 그냥 가가지고 말했어. 시바데 코란 게 시비 통이 차네 엔진다. 코란 노이 차네 엔을 따라 그랬어. 배자들은 그렇고.
So anyway, some people think that when it is self-knowing, there's a different mind, which knows the mind that apprehends the form. Right? For example, there's a mind apprehending the form, and then there's another mind apprehending that mind. It sounds like that, but it's not like that. It is the very mind which apprehends the form. It also apprehends itself, so therefore it's called the self-knower or self-knowing.
다 용이 차서만 되게 다시 좀 도도를 말아왔어. 시를 소리 제도를 말아와.
So the mind which knows itself, the mind will not know the other object, right?
다 듣는다고 같이 듣는다고 상해야 돼. 다시 나도 제세자도 소리 다 나도 더 양로세에서 또 말아왔어.
So we just have to go on and think like that. Otherwise, without experience, we will not be able to understand or cognize it 100%.
Nice behind you.
Right?
Yeah, you just we were talking about it, we came out to say hi.
He heard we were talking about it.
Maybe he said, "Oh, you gotta talk about me. Are you gossiping me?" 이제 다 같이 전담하고 수수 해다 스페셜한 만납시고 되면서 이제로 지금 하는 거죠. 이것도 싫어. 다 이게 시비시죠.
So anyway, we just go on and accept what it is said in the text by different tenets. Other than that, we will not be able to understand more.
Yeah.
Do they develop this idea about the self-knowing cognition because of trying to explain memory, isn't it?
소소 일단 템퍼디 파 시야 상담은 시야 탑시지는데 내가 알아서 되는 거를 들어요.
자, 이제 나를 개 meleng에서 이해도 제발 제왕서 말아. 아니 대리가 뭐보다 된다고 내가 나를 꼭 말했어요.
Yeah, so you can remember, you can remember by seeing something like the soul. By saying that, you can remember that you have been beaten like that.
Yeah.
And so you don't need a self-knower,
Yeah, but
it knows by itself.
I mean, like the people who came up with this idea, like that there is one kind of cognition that knows itself.
Yeah.
They developed that idea because they had to explain memory, like why we can remember something. Because otherwise it seems like if you only know the object outside, then how do you know that you knew it? Do you know what I mean?
소속이 시험에 가서 시고 그랬어. 내 시기를 시야지라. 내 시험에 가서 하고, 내 시험에 가서 하고 그랬어. 라다 그런도 답변한데 라리 시야를 시도 라리 파 콜 시도는 한다 아파제 소속이 템벌 때는 그 라리 시험에 그랬어.
맞네. 라리 켈행에서 라리 너한테 대ten도 말, 대시도 말했어. 뭐가 시기구나. 라리도 여와도 템을 했어.
나한테
켈행에서 대고 말했어.
또 tengi 여자한테 대답하는 데는 나를 시기에서 그랬어.
쟁개와 쟁바 여와 연자라는 거 말했으라고 그래. 쟁바 여자 아니 얘도 시험도 와 대고 말했어.
내 템벌로 시기를 다 혼자라.
저거시
템벌로 봐 시기를 다 시험했어. 대시지야 단다리다 알아서나다 그냥 믿어도 템벌 여자 내 템벌 때는 혼자 나를 열었으면 걔는 시험에서 그랬어.
대파제는 다다 쟁바 여와 연자라는 거 말했어 그랬어. 아니 봐. 아니 소설만 통통말 땅가 엄마 저 소리에 제영화자 쟁바 여와자라는 거 말, 쟁바 거 말했어.
템벌을 그런 말을 봐.
쟁바 그걸 그런 그때라는 따고 맞고. 다 쟁바도 어때를 그리고 그래. 나는 맨날 대고 말했어. 나는 내가 대고 말. 쟁바 저는 여와도 쟁여를 했어.
저 집에서는 더 템벌을 말을 했어.
딱 쟁바 걸으려고 해다. 다 된다고 해서 그러지. 쟁바도 맨날 나는 맨날 대고 말했어.
위에서 하는 거예요.
그런 거예요. 그래서 지금 제도 많이 시도 대라는 것만 알면 컨텐츠 와서 이렇게 말하면
So one is saying that you can remember it, you can remember it, so why do you need a self-knower, to know that? You can know it, by seeing the reasons or signs and so forth. So you can know it, you can remember it, so you don't need. And then the other one is saying because there is a self-cognizer, therefore you can remember it.
Yeah.
So that's their explanation. Those who assert the self-cognizer says that because there is a self-cognizer, therefore you can remember it. And then those who don't accept the self-cognizer says, you can remember it, so why do you need self-cognizer?
Yeah.
맨날 그래서 전용을 했는데 전용하던 저거는 전시 둘이더라. 아니 그 시한테 어떤 걸 맞춰도 왔어. 어떤 금방 저거 소리는 그만 둘째가 사고서 그것도 전용을 했대. 내가 그런 거 말했어. 그런 맞춰야 되니 누가 소리하고 내가 둘째가 그 전용을 했어.
And so it remembers all those things that happened, because by seeing the sore, by seeing the wound, it says, I've been bitten by a snake and so forth. So it remembers everything. So you don't need a self-cognizer for that.
다 개인이도 라는 게 대대도 말했어. 라는 이유가 대체는 그랬어.
And those who accept or assert the self-cognizer says, if there's no self-cognizer, you'll not be able to remember that. Because there's self-cognizer, therefore you are able to remember it.
들으라고 이제 같이 다 라는 먹으면 대세 땡이지 다들 했다는 건 빼시 막 빼야 가지고 근데 연료가 된 거라 대시 무슨 신주 쓰시는 지뢰.
Anyway, so that's the proof to say that you don't need self-cognizer.
But basically for this system, because this is like the Dignaga and Dharmakirti, the reason for creating this category of mind that knows itself is to explain memory, right?
다들 제벌이 배치들어서 제벌이 시야치들어서 제벌골라.
이게 제일이지. 이게 힘이 제일 들어왔어.
그래,
이게 시바도 제일 제대로 하는 거고.
맞아, 오늘 안에 걸로 시야치가 근데 제벌 시야골라. 제벌 시야치들어서.
이게 시바도 제일 제대로 하는 거야. 그래서 이게 힘이나 분들이
시에서 먼저 대시자라다. 대시자라다. 다들 배제 되나와 안에 걸로 시야가. 안에 걸로 대시게요라다. 배제 되나와 안에 걸로 대시 좀 걸어. 다 안에 걸로 대시 줘야 돼. 그거 제벌 걸로 대시 줘야 인자. 그래 거 안에 걸로 대시 좀 걸어 왜서. 배제 되나와서.
대 절반은 들어가는 거니 네 콜라야 간데서 하고 말했어. 이제 이게 시바도 힘을 제대로 하는 데 단대시하고 그래서
Not sure if it is talking about the memory or the remembrance. Anyway, so here it is explaining explaining in regards to the mind, which knows the mind itself.
Yeah.
번드미시 쓰시나 번드미시 코로나 병을 알게 되시는 거예요. 번드미시 반바시 오늘 번드미시 코로나시나 코로나 병을 알게 되시는 거예요.
So, for example, like the eye consciousness cognizing the vase knows the vase, right? The eye consciousness cognizing the vase knows the vase, but who knows itself? Who knows the mind, eye consciousness itself? And then it says, there's this mind called self-cognizer, which knows the eye consciousness, which knows the vase, or which cognizes the vase.
아니 그다다 나리가 다 전반을 가진 저 자에서 왔어.
And so you can relate that also with the memory.
아니 단다 네 아니 이렇게 행해도 저거 이렇게 행해도 저거 나를 캠내는 것이 전반을 잡고 대단 그 전반을 여기 대대에서 왔어.
Yeah, so those who don't assert says, because you can remember, therefore you don't need self-cognizer. So it is related with the remembering or the memory. But in this context, I'm not sure. I don't know.
이게 되지. 다 대라이나 라는 게 지금 테마 제시 마마마 또 소리였어.
So that which has the aspect of an apprehender is the definition of self-knower, and that which has the aspect of an apprehender and is free from conceptuality and is non-mistaken is the definition of self-knowing direct perceiver. And when it's divided, there are three. Valid cognizers that are self-knowing direct perceiver, subsequent cognizers that are self-knowing direct perceiver, and awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained that are self-knowing direct perceiver.
다들라도 다 동반의 미신이 아니고 그러는 게 있어나 다 zuldu 미신 그러나 zuldu 미신 냐냐를 대토고.
And then this is the first one, which is the valid cognizer that are self-knowing direct perceiver. And it's, for example, the first moment of a self-knowing direct perceiver that experiences an eye consciousness.
근데 이반은 다 미신을 계시니까 다 오더라고.
The second one, the subsequent cognizer, is the second moment of that.
다 나라만 해봐도 전체적인 대화 시발만이 요라는 게다. 아니 실업이지 대화 시발만이 요라는 게서. 아니 장배배지 제바처마 제바처마만이 요라는 게서 무슨
And then, so there are three examples for to which an object appears, but it's not ascertained. There are self-knowing direct perceivers. So the first, this is a self-knowing direct perceiver in the continuum of samkhaya that experiences bliss as being a consciousness, and a self-knowing direct perceiver in the continuum of vaisheshika that experiences bliss as being consciousness, and a self-knower in the continuum of nihilist that experiences an inferential cognizer as being a valid cognizer.
뭐다데 순서죠. 다들도 좀다 거좀 도서라들 나한테 이제 계속 가는 하고 있어요.
Vaisheshika?
싫어봐. 다 가는데도 다
These are Hindu.
야.
Yes.
그래서 가서 다 자하고 주들이 들어왔어요. 그래서 다 전다 수준 도서라들 나한테 이랬어요.
So they're all, explained in this way according to the thoughts or the views of the tenets.
So are they saying like the a Samkhya that experiences bliss as being consciousness?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand why this is Mangla Mangye. What's appearing and what's
대화 시발이냐 대화 시발.
안에 스위스
장치가.
장점은 대화 시발은 녀지라.
근데 대화 때
대화 시발은 녀지라. 근데 나만 왜 있다가 인수가
다 대화 때 녀지. 얘나 시발이 맞다 망이 인지로 왔다. 저기 하고 그래서.
뭐 대화 대화 시발은 녀지.
대화 시발이 맞다.
녀지.
녀지 녀지.
대화 시발은 녀지.
시당 대화 세리다 시발을. 시당 대화 세리 시발을 용화이다. 용화. 시당 대화 세리 용이셔. 시발이래.
So generally the bliss is what? Is it a consciousness?
어이다.
Yeah, in an experience or feeling at least.
근데 feeling right?
There's different type of bliss. There's like the bliss which is bodily, and then there's mental bliss.
But they are all feeling, right?
Yeah, basically. Well,
So therefore conscious?
but there's also Yiki Dewa, right?
Yeah.
Yiki Dewa.
Yeah,
Is it a
yeah.
Toa?
It's two aren't.
Yeah, so maybe they're all feeling.
They're all feeling now. It's something very comfortable and they're feeling right.
So how is that unascertained?
But that's what I'm wondering. Like, so,
근데 이거 다 다시 대화 나와도 다
That's
시발만
my
하고
question.
그랬어.
yeah. But, so maybe this is talking about some particular absorption that these people do or something. Which one is unascertained? The Dewa Shiva Yimba?
가래든 나오래, 가래든 망해오래 했어.
시발이 나와지 대화를 망하더라. 시발이 나와지 시발이 대화를 망해와. 다 냐되게 오지. 시발 대화 때 냐되게 나 다들 대화를 망해와. 시발이 망해와. 대화 나와서 대화 시발이 망해와.
대화를 시해봐야 망해봐. 대화 나오지. 시해봐야 망해봐.
시발이 망해와.
Right? So, who's experiencing bliss, but is not ascertained that bliss is consciousness. So the object that appears, is the bliss, and which is not ascertained, is that bliss as being consciousness. So, so because he's experiencing the bliss, therefore it appears, but it's not ascertained. So maybe something like that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you have something to say?
We can go first.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if it was the self-knowing in the state of bliss, the self-knowing isn't ascertained.
Mm-hmm. Self-knowing is not ascertained.
Yeah, in the state of bliss.
The data the Ranide Maniores.
Ah.
Ranide Ranide Maniores. Now I said that Maniores, Manibadi, Ranide Maniores. Okay.
That sounds like being unconscious.
So it's the consciousness. I would say it's the consciousness that appears, but it's not ascertained. So because he's so attached, to the bliss, that he doesn't, the unconscious does appear, but he cannot ascertain, the consciousness. So something like that, but I'm not very sure myself also.
This is we call it.
So it's the view of the Samkhayas. And then also it says the nihilist, in the circle in the continuum of nihilist that experiences an inferential cognition as being a valid cognizer. This? 지난 제가 생각해도 제가
많이 썼나? 제가 많이 썼지. 제가 내가 특가더라고. 이마시도 집에서. 다들 제가 생각도 올라가지고 제가적으로 맞서고 있어.
So, and maybe there's a difference in inferential cognizer and inferential valid cognizer. Inferential valid cognizer and inferential cognizer. So inferential cognizer is not necessarily inferential, and it's not necessarily valid cognizer. If it's inference, it doesn't mean it has to be valid. Right?
They will come to this.
So maybe that's what he's saying here. They have. It appears, that the inferential cognizer appears, but it's not, cognized as a valid cognizer.
It seems like all three of these have some relation to tenets.
Mm-hmm.
Like there must be some practice peculiar to these groups. And they each have like one particular group, so maybe, because the appearing but not ascertained, I always thought of as like kind of zoning out. We say in English zoning out, things are happening but you don't even notice time passing or anything, and then someone will say, hey, I've been calling you, so maybe these guys are doing some kind of, for their religion, they do some yoga or something where...
So this is explained in accordance with their views or with their tenets.
Okay? 다 계산을 시면 다 나중에서 모든 나중에서 왔어.
Okay, so now the fourth one, which is the direct, it's a direct perceiver. The fourth one is the yogic direct perceiver.
봐. 안나 나가 통모 다케데 지금 신호도 뜨는 데 저거 같이 또 받는 다시 만지고 바지지 이렇게 제 봐서.
And then the definition of the yogic direct perceiver is that which is generated independence on its one uncommon and important condition. A meditative stabilization that is a union of karma body and special insight and is an other knowing exalted knower in the continuum of spirit that is free from conceptuality and undertaking.
간제 단데 간제 아니 다치 아니 신에다 화도 공부할 때에 다 밥을 이제 정말고 그래서.
And so it has to be, it has to be knower with the continuum of spirit being that is generated independence upon meditative stabilization that is the union of karma body and special insight.
세븐이 다 그랬더니 신에도 아니 이 신이 유발을 제대로 좀 해라 남죠. 화도 동거를 드리잖아.
And so, so there's, by depending on the 9 methods of the karma body, and then you achieve karma body, and then once you have achieved karma body, then you focus on a single, focus on an object single pointedly, and then the object that you focus in a single pointedly, you analyze on that object, and then through analyzing that, through the analysis of that object, then you develop that special insight.
아니 신에서 다 깨지면서 신에서 다 전다 좀 감각하게 맞아 신에 다 신에 매번 하잖아 좀 다시 좀 같이 더 말해.
So the karma body is very important. So all these tenets, all these different schools accepts or assert the karma body, and without karma body, it's very difficult. That's why we're not able to generate any realizations.
알아서 샘때 예질라 밑받질라 되니 다 까먹게 되는데.
And so we cannot even focus on an object single pointedly for even 5 minutes.
그래도 신에게 더 있나 아니 샘 밑받을 때니 다 가서 되는 대통령으로.
So if you're able to generate the karma body, then you would be able to focus on an object as long as you want.
오케이 가지 아니 신에 되거나 다 동반이라 미리 신에로 오고 맨날 직접 또 말하면 맨날 직접 야 아까는 신에로 오고 근데 다 아니 신에도 다 네가 뭐 신에도 빨리 다 남에로 오시라고 해서 왔어. 그나 건사단으로 빨리 다 건사단으로 이리와 되는 게 신이 대공발할 신이 아니 하도 아니 드디어 신에도 하도 네가 공발할 때네 아니 라인에서도 또 했다. 그래서 법이 진짜 많이 나타 나중에 해서 좋아.
And so here, in this context, you need a karma body. Maybe it's the object of karma body here is selflessness, emptiness. So generally you can choose any kind of object to be the object of karma body, like the statues or the pictures, image of the Buddha, or any kind of other thoughts like the death and impermanence of selflessness and so forth. So anyway, so here maybe the object is the selflessness. So you develop this karma body, focusing on selflessness, and then with that mind you analyze about the selflessness, and when and then through that you achieve the special insight. So this has to be the union of this karma body and special insight of that upon that object, and through that you generate this mind. It's called the yogic direct perceiver.
어떻게 다 단단한 듯이 예와시는 맛 온도도 예치는 다르게 나중에 딱 용했어야 돼 말이야. 용했어야 돼. 땅에서 막 그렇죠.
So this is what we're talking about, the direct perceiver, right? So the direct perceiver, we have the sense direct perceiver, mental direct perceiver, self knowing direct perceiver, and now the fourth one is the yogic direct perceiver.
어떻게 다 그래도 다 담보라 변에 다시 돌아 받지 말아 돼. 아니 이거 나중에 세마치. 다시 돌아 받지 말아 그지 님바는 정도는 제시할 수 그래서 나라만 가요 말이야. 나중에 나라 인격이 작을 해서.
And then the division is yogic direct perceiver. There are two. It says better cognize that yogic direct perceiver, and self cognize that yogic direct perceiver. Change the person.
담보 다시 돌아 받지 말아 그지 담보다.
And so the first one is the uninterpreted path, or the path of seeing. The first moment of the uninterpreted path, the path of seeing, and then the second, and then subsequent cognizer, subsequent cognizer that are usually perceivable would be like the second moment of that, second moment of the uninterpreted part of the part of seeing, and there's no yogic perceiver to which the things appear but not ascertained, because anything that appears is ascertained, is necessarily ascertained by the yogic perceiver.
대면배가 아니 딱 디제를 르 아니 정말 남자 바디 주력이야. 르르 치마도 니네 나바도 내가 시선을 실었어. 가지 나중에서 나 아니 딱 아니 이 가지 아니 나와야 내로 그래서
So like it says, there are no objects object appears, but it's not ascertained that are yogic perceiver, because whatever is yogic perceiver, whatever is a yogic perceiver, necessarily ascertain is object of comprehension.
그러와 아니 괜히 나중에 제시 요청 괜히 기진이 왔다고 제시 다오나 아니 괜히 막 강가 제시 자료를 때는 좀 더 내가 가자.
This is because Dharmakirti's commentary on Dignagas, the compendium of Vedic cognition, and it says from just seeing the great intelligent ones in all aspects. All those subsequent cognizers that are yogic perceiver exist, the second moment and so forth of an omniscient exalted in the wisdom are not subsequent cognizer, because whatever is an omniscient exalted wisdom is necessarily a valid cognizer. And so in the context of the subsequent cognizer, which is any second moment of any object, is any the consciousness is any cognizer, is subsequent cognizer, right? But it says here but the second moment and so forth of the omniscient exalted wisdom are not subsequent cognizer. So what do you say about that? So if it's a second moment, it's not necessarily subsequent cognizer, right?
Say that again.
They can't have subsequent.
Yeah. Yeah, second moment of the cognition. So when you cognize it, you cognize the flower for the first moment, that's valid cognizer. Mm-hmm. And then in the second moment of that, cognition will become a subsequent cognizer, mm-hmm. Right? But then when the omniscient mind sees it, when Buddha's mind, the omniscient mind sees it, then the first moment is a valid cognizer, second moment, third moment, fourth moment is still valid cognizer.
Free from conception. Conceptual.
Each moment is unique for you.
Conceptualization.
It's maybe because I think the way that, I'm just saying my own opinion, but the way that the normal person's mind work is once you see the thing, you label it, and then your mind can kind of relax. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to see it again and again every second. But the way that a Buddha sees things is he sees the subtle impermanence, which means he sees every instant of the thing, mm-hmm. freshly. Mm-hmm. So that way it's always new.
New.
남체 기준이 발라서 지금까지 다 공부를 했어. 이거도 지도가 되나? 단어 사진을 했어. 고장. 지금 세장스. 아니, 김치시가 사토지 마서. 아니, 사는 뭐 땅이 있어요. 대단한 거지. 대단한 거지. 아니, 사는 뭐 땅이 있으나 남체가 아니 사토지 마음에 통화서 뭐. 아니, 대대지 메시지야. 제만한 미술사만 제시된 게나 인체시 기준이 봐 제시해서 타와서 타입에 대해서 제자 어떻게 넣어?
기준이 봐야 되는 제시를 맞춰서
기준이 맞는 제시고 말해서 제만한데 또 쓰마든지 제시고 말해서.
So it says that the omniscient exalted wisdom is necessarily a valid cognizer. This is so because Gyaltsab's explanation of Dharmakirti's commentary on Dignaga's compendium of Vedic cognition, unmistaken illumination of the path to liberation, says, no matter how much I turn inside and think about it, I do not feel that an omniscient exalted wisdom is not pervaded by being a new realizer. it says, in other words, an omniscient exalted wisdom is necessarily a new realizer. Also, Rinpoche, clearing away darkness in the mind with respect to the treatise on valid cognition says, if something becomes subsequent cognizer merely through its objects being apprehended by a former valid cognizer, it will follow that the second and subsequent moment of an omniscient exalted wisdom would be subsequent cognizer. There exist many such flows as will be indicated below. So according to that, it is saying that if it is second moment, then it's not necessary to be subsequent cognizer. So second moment of the omniscient mind, is the second moment, but it's not a subsequent cognizer, because if it is omniscient mind, it's necessarily a valid cognizer.
So is Kedrup saying that there's a problem with this?
Yes.
He's saying
So then if it is if the second moment has to be subsequent cognizers, then the second moment of the omniscient mind has to be subsequent cognizer also. So that he's saying that if it's second moment, it's not necessary to be subsequent cognizer. Only in that case, Only in that case.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, it's almost necessary.
Is he going to tell us why?
Huh?
Are we going to know why?
Yeah, that's the why.
That is the why.
That's the why. After that, it's a Z.
제시서 가래. 또서 쪽에 못 봤어요. 단 저거잖아. 라운드지 천만금이 시바 만년비 아니 땡이 야주 쪽으로 나가고. 라운드지 천만금을 뛰고 있는 거로 정말 뛰고.
So the second moment has to depend on the first moment, right? If the first moment has stopped completely, then it's not a second moment. Then when you forgot it completely, and then you see it, it's completely new to you.
Right.
So it's not a second moment. The second moment has to be falling to that which you already know.
Right.
So you have to know it, and then it says, oh yeah, that's it. I know it already. So you have to feel that. Then that becomes second moment.
하나님 사제다 잡고 말아서 아니 깨지 이빠데 다 제시한 거죠. 선바들에요. 시와들은 좀 그냥 가자. 제시를 말하잖아. 이빠이 배정해요.
The second moment, is a subsequent cognizer. But what about the third and fourth moment?
보이다.
Same.
For an omniscient?
No, for ordinary mind.
Ordinary should
They are
be seen as
subsequent.
second.
They are subsequent. Everything after the first is.
Look at my 제시.
그때 가서 다소 그것만 그걸로 돼 봤어. 배정을 하면 되었어. 그 이번 건 대셔서는 선바 시와가 주변에 말에 나고 말았어.
So in the example, we use the second moment, but that doesn't mean that third, fourth moment are not subsequent cognizer, right?
그러나 아이 메시지 때문에 대신에 내가 잡아라. 아니 나가 가서 오 그렇게 돼.
Okay, guess.
You see, I'm very old.
Where are you?
Oh,
How many times?
yeah. 그러나 아이 영이 때문에 대신에 내가 잡아라. 아니 머리 심한 머리 떼고 사는 딸뭐 그래 많이 때문에 말았어. 그 대절 때 못마서 말았어.
So just like
Only.
when you ask, for example, of American women, and you say Deborah. So when you give Deborah as an example, it doesn't mean Maureen is not. Like Maureen can be an example of American women.
다 있나 다 좋아져요. 다 조종학 가리는 그만 통해요. 다 그나 가상 맞춰 다 대주는 통해요. 와. 대리 전화도 지나 맞쪽에 채만 열어요. 맞나 주는 걸로. 다 지시해요. 그러고.
So you have seen me all the time, right? So today you see me again, right? So when you see me today, do you have valid cognizers? Do you have the valid cognizer seeing me today or no?
Yeah.
Or is it a subsequent cognizer?
No, you have a valid cognizer. So when I first, if I was walking today outside, and then suddenly Geshe appeared. At the moment before he was there, I didn't see him. So the first moment that he came should be a valid direct perception. But then I identified him. Oh, it's Geshe. The second moment, it's already, the subsequent cognitive.
Okay.
So it's like that, right?
It wouldn't be valid because it's not new. It could be direct,
No, it's new.
but it's not
No,
valid.
it's only new one time in your life, I thought.
Really?
Yeah, that's
No,
what
but
I thought.
everything's
There was that
changed,
big
so
argument.
every time you see it is new.
Only
So
once in
no,
your
when
life
You're
it's
not the same
valid.
Even when you, but you don't
a month ago.
necessarily identify, if it only takes once ever to then, for something to never be new again,
Yeah.
then when you see something that you can't recognize at first, if you are some distance away, in fact, when I saw him, we were actually quite far apart. I was way over there and he was over there. So we were both looking at each other, who is that? And then we saw who we are. So for the first beginning moments there, I didn't recognize him. I didn't know if it was him or someone else.
We had this discussion a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I
It
missed
was
it.
just around this issue,
So
It
then,
was.
that there was
So
only
then-
once
Okay.
ever that's valid.
Because you
That was
know,
my understanding.
once you recognize, you know it's Geshe, but somebody will have to tell you who it is if you've never seen it before.
There was a lot of confusion.
Yes.
It's this issue.
다 대체하서 말 컴퓨터 레스 이나야 제시도 위해서 테마요 그냥 거기
Confused.
테마 싸우는 게임을 좋아. 제시도 위해서
Confusion on our part.
그래서
나는
테마
이만 다른 게 말을 알았어. 대체시 말했어.
대체해야 되지. 테마 싸워 게임을 하고 말아.
말다. 아 그랬어.
테마 싸워 게임을 하고 말아.
저랑 이만 따 로주 관을 저라 통과라. 로주 관 저라 하나 따 로주 저라 통도네. 다 로주라. 대체 말에 대체시했어.
네가 테마 게임을 했어. 아, 네가 지금 뭔가 제시도 위해 와서. 테마 게임을 해. 테마 게임을 했어. 근데 테마 게임.
생각하는 셔.
테마 게임. 네가 다 근데 대토로 테마까지 게임을 했어. 근데 네가 무슨 당신이 나 먼저 지금 싸우고 접사를 와. 주성하다 대토로 테마 게임을 했어. 얘한테 우리 제시도 위해 와. 그것도 그러거든. 제시 제한서 제한한테 거다로 지시하는 거. 근데 테마로 계약해내고 그랬어.
So
제시도 위해 와.
in a way, what Andy is saying is right because, like, you're seeing him for the first time in a way that, in a sense, like you have never seen him before, before that person of that day, right? So like 1 day older, let's say 1 day older person, 1 day older Geshe, 1 day older person. When you see that, you're seeing for the first time, right? You saw the person that you saw yesterday is like 1 day younger, yeah. And then when we split that, you can say, half day younger or half day older or like hour older, minute older, second older, like that. So every moment you can have that recognizer, right? But then again, then it's very difficult to say there's no substantive cognizer, there's a substantive cognizer, right? So everything will be new like that.
yeah.
So how do you put it?
One thought comes to mind is maybe, I don't know that this is, I haven't read this anywhere, but a thought comes to mind is that maybe it's a continuous session of apprehending the object.
Yeah.
So you do have a distinct, valid, the first moment and then second moment, so on and so forth, and then that session ends. And then, so today is Wednesday, I'm seeing you this Wednesday. Next week, I'll see you again for the first time. Then that's valid, and then boom, this is Damchoe, and so on and so forth.
So the second moment comes right after that?
I'm sorry?
So second moment has to be right after that?
After the first one,
After the
yes.
first moment,
And-
right?
And in my mind, and
So if there's a break, for a long time,
but I'm not,
then next time you see, it will be a new person, right?
It seems
Yeah, that's
but
right.
it's within the same
seems so
session.
arbitrary.
Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because when I'm seeing you next week, you're different.
That's
You're
right.
not the same.
Exactly. So you're seeing for the first time, right?
That
the person who is
you-
a week older, a person who
The
is a week
Damchoe of
older,
this week.
yeah, would be a new person,
I'm
right?
not saying I'm right, but that's how I understand.
That's what. Yeah.
나도 지금 뒤에 싸워도 또 테마에 와가지고 통계만 그거에 말았어. 이 쌀쌀 코 로게만 통계 말았어. 근데 그 뒤에 싸워 저번에 때도 테마 열었어.
안되지. 기진 니바라, 기진 니바데 싸워라. 기진 니바데 싸워라. 기진 니바데 기진 담고서 여마라. 기진 니바부터 기진 니바 고서 싸워라.
뒤가도요.
제시도 간샤워.
뒤가도요. 테마 가면서 또 세가 많이 대용되서 아니 제시지. 얘는 뒤가도 않고 싸워도 돼 참아. 깨대요. 나서 용어는 나도 용어에 맞는 또 말았어.
맞다 그 너무 또 들어. 너무 또 살아야 돼. 이제 또는 또 받으라. 또 생각을 또 해줘라. 왜냐면 또 생각을 말아. 근데 싸워 또 보여. 또 생각을 그 진짜로 대차. 그게 다 못들어 또 하래. 또 생각을 그게 다 못해. 아주 또 하래. 이게 니워라. 그게 니워디 싸워라. 그게 니워디 니워 더 배워라.
다 기신이 사지 제는 저 말이다. 대기사 말이야. 되게 올라요. 연락이 됐던 말이야. 대지단은 제시 명이 적어서. 되게 말했어. 얘나 아까 세마 여기가 제시 여기가 근데 세마 되냐면 거래요. 세마 그래서 싸워서 게임 거죠.
더 팀만도 주주고 걸다 하는 샤워.
그래서 이따 이 싸워서 저기 오는다. 아니 다 같이 대회와이나 세마 지나는 데 거기서 잘 그랬어.
제시 들어간다. 이렇게 니워디다 제시 많이 맞다. 맞다. 제시 임바도 걸다.
대인바 갈 때는 교수님만 통화도 나도 들어와. 대가는 통화소서는 그 제시가 꼭 다르고 제대로 먹었어. 그래서 꼭 제시 그것만 있고 그만 통하면 그도 제대로 가는 거. 당연히 갖고 그랬어.
얘네 거다 통화해줘라. 누가 통화도 말아.
다 기신 가시지 가서 대기하는 게 대체 저렇게 그렇게 말했어. 세월이 빠지는 시간에는 난 나가서 다 통화해서 다 대라 기신 가서 레이스만 그냥 로이로서. 대해서 제시했어.
So we normally, normally when we see something, then we say we saw it again. And I say, oh, I saw it before, and I'm seeing the same thing that I saw before. I remember that. But then what you're seeing now is not the thing that you saw before, right? It's already, it has that what you saw has already passed. Now what you're seeing is the present one, it wasn't there before. You haven't seen what you're seeing now, and when you count that by moment. But then we normally say, oh, I know, I know this person. I know Andy now because I've seen him before. If I haven't seen him before, I wouldn't know him now. So therefore, that mind will call the subsequent mind.
But there is.
제시해도 다.
Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
So, in Western philosophy, there was this group that had this idea that your perception was made up of these sort of elements that when you brought them together and applied a name to it, that became that sort of recognition. And so the way I understood it a few weeks ago was that once that collecting and naming happened that first time, that was the direct cognizer, the valid cognizer at that point, and it only happens at one time when that naming.
I think the valid cognizer can't have the naming. It's a
It's before
how do you say, non-conceptual, right?
Before the naming happens.
So it has to be before you label the thing.
So
It's a very naked awareness of the thing in the kind of things of it, before you really discriminate it as an object or name it. Once you name it, it's then subsequent. Like after that, you've kind of put a placeholder on it. I know this one now. I don't have to devote effort to knowing it again.
But I still think that process only happens once.
I think in general, it's probably true, but my feeling is like Gyaltsab says here, it's hard to imagine the omniscient mind not knowing everything freshly all the time.
I think for them it is.
Yeah, but so
But
in
for
that
us, I'm
case,
not sure
but
we're
the
able
same
to.
principle, if it has to do with the fact that things are fleeting, so according to this, religion, things are fleeting moment by moment, and the Buddha is aware of that, which means he's aware of every single point, instant, like the very fleeting nature of things. So it's always new for him. In the same way, like we ordinary people don't perceive that moment by moment impermanence of things, but we do perceive the gross impermanence. So for example, if you live in the same apartment for years and years and years, and your furniture is all like this, and you get up in the middle of the night in the dark, and you can walk through because you know where everything is. That's like a subsequent cognition. You have all of your placeholders, you don't have to relearn everything. One day while you're gone, your wife rearranges all of the furniture. And then you come and paints the house or something, and you come in and you're like, oh, you have to re-know it again. Although it's the same stuff and everything, you have to get used to it. In the same way, like somebody who goes through a really, shocking change or something, loses a limb or is burned all over their body or something, you have to, even though they're the same person and you know them, you have to relearn them. Or in the same way, like things which are unexpectedly encountered in a place that you don't expect them. So like here we expect to see each other because we get used to seeing each other. So then maybe we don't really have like the moment, that really pure moment, because it's so quickly that we expect to see you. So we already have it labeled, he's going to be there. But if I met you somewhere where I never expected to see you, it may be that first moment of like shock, oh my God, before I identify you, maybe like that. I mean, I'm just thinking that kind
I think that's good. I was just thinking about this idea of the session probably not being sufficient. That there needs to be some other piece, that sort of more naked kind of.
I think it's meeting the criteria of it being new, like what that means to be new versus not new.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay, Gujarat now we will start. I have to go to Ajamento's house to do her daughter's graduation. Ajamento, Damchoe's sister.
My sister,
Okay.
my niece, yeah,
from high school.
from high school.
Okay. Then just stop. Then we need to have some more discussion. Okay.
Yeah, what age?
About, just real quick,
What age changes?
What, 39?
is there anything new in the Buddha's mind? Like
Everything.
a second moment? Because he sees,
We just talked about it.
It's like everything's new in Buddhism.
but what I'm saying is Buddha perceives everything constantly throughout the 3 times, so he already knows it.
Yes,
So how is it new?
because the things are changing all the time.
But he sees them even before they change. He knows them, like he knows every from instant of the past, present, and future. So the fact that it's new to a Buddha's mind is like,
That's the reason why it's new to him all the time.
he already knows it,
I don't think the future is there and the past is there.
but he sees it still.
I don't know. It's another whole nother
Yeah,
physical.
all so big discussion.
That's the problem I have with the word new.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So yet.
Which page are we on?
Page 38.
Okay,
Page 38.
okay. Starting on page 39, Thanksgiving Mandala offering.
Just Saji Puji.
Huh?
Quick.
Just
Quick.
Quick, oh, you got it, okay.
Just say it then.
Damn.
Just say it.
Ground, perfume, anointing.
Saji, Shogi,
Oh, that's right. Saji.
Saji,